The fluorescent lights of the airport terminal buzzed like distant thunder, casting harsh shadows across the scuffed linoleum floor. It was just past midnight in the sprawling chaos of Horizon International, where weary travelers dragged suitcases and families reunited in hurried embraces. But in the corner near Gate 17, a small boy, no older than 8, sat huddled on the edge of a plastic chair, his face buried in his hands. His sobs cut through the murmur of announcements and rolling wheels, raw, heartbroken wails that spoke of a world suddenly too vast and empty. "Mommy," he whimpered, his voice cracking. "You said you'd be right here." The plane from the East Coast had taxied in an hour ago, passengers streaming out like a river, but no one matching his description had appeared. Airport staff glanced his way, their radios crackling with routine checks, but the night shift was stretched thin, and the boy's unclaimed ticket lay crumpled beside him, a silent accusation. Ethan Ghost Harlan leaned against the railing of the observation deck upstairs, nursing a lukewarm coffee from the all-night kiosk. At 42, he was a man forged in the fires of forgotten wars and harder roads, his leather vest patched with the emblem of the Iron Vow Riders, a faded promise etched in iron and ink. Scars traced his knuckles like old maps, reminders of battles won and oaths sworn under desert suns. He'd ridden into town that evening with a handful of his crew, chasing the ghost of a lead on an old debt. But the airport stop was meant to be quick. Fuel up the bikes, grab a map, and vanish into the pre-dawn highways. Yet something pulled him here, a nagging itch from a promise he'd buried deep, a vow to protect the lost, made to a brother-in-arms who'd never come home. Ethan's eyes, sharp as chipped flint, scanned the terminal below, and that's when he saw the boy, alone, terrified. The kind of vulnerability that clawed at the soul of anyone who'd ever left someone behind. He set the coffee down, the styrofoam cup hissing faintly against the metal rail. "Rico," he muttered into his phone, voice gravel rough from years of wind and smoke. "Get the others. Terminal level, Gate 17, now." His second-in-command, a burly veteran named Marcus with a laugh like rolling thunder, didn't question it. Within minutes, the low rumble of Harleys echoed through the parking structure, a convoy of 12 bikes pulling up to the curb like shadows materializing from the night. The riders dismounted in unison, their boots thudding against concrete, chains jingling softly under the sodium lamps. They weren't the monsters the headlines painted, no roaring engines to terrify, just quiet purpose in their strides. Ethan led the way through the sliding doors, the scent of exhaust clinging to their jackets like a badge of honor. The boy looked up as Ethan approached, his eyes red-rimmed and wide, clutching a faded backpack with a cartoon airplane stitched on it. "Hey, kid," Ethan said, crouching to his level, his voice steady as an anchor in a storm. The terminal's air hummed with the whoosh of escalators and the distant chime of baggage claims, but in that moment, it all faded. "What's your name?" The boy sniffled, wiping his nose on his sleeve. "Noah. My mom. She was on the flight. Flight 214 from Evergreen, but she didn't get off. Everyone else did, but not her." His words tumbled out, laced with the fear of a child staring into an abyss. Ethan glanced at the ticket stub, Noah's small hand trembling as he pointed to the details. The plane had landed safely, no reports of issues, but something was wrong, deeply wrong. Marcus knelt beside him, his massive frame gentle as he pulled a worn bandana from his pocket. "Here, champ, blow your nose. We're gonna find her." But the other riders fanned out subtly, their presence a wall of quiet strength amid the indifferent crowd. One, a woman named Lena with silver streaks in her braid and eyes that had seen too many hospital vigils, scanned the monitors, her fingers tapping a rhythm on her phone. "No delays logged," she murmured to Ethan, "but passenger manifests can glitch, or worse." Ethan's jaw tightened. He'd seen manifests lie before, bureaucratic oversights that buried truths under red tape. This wasn't just a missing mom. It felt like the echo of every promise broken in his life, from the foxhole oaths to the roadside vows that bound his crew like blood. As the first hints of dawn bled through the terminal's vast windows, painting the glass in hues of bruised purple, Ethan made the call that would ripple through their world. "Full muster," he told Rico over the encrypted line. "Every chapter, every rider. We're not leaving till we know." It was a promise unspoken, yet ironclad, the kind that survived shrapnel and heartbreak. Noah's small hand slipped into Ethan's, trust blooming in the unlikeliest soil. The boy didn't know it yet, but this intervention, born of a midnight cry, would summon shadows from across state lines. Mechanics from dusty garages, welders from midnight shifts, all converging on this fluorescent-lit limbo. By sunrise, the airport would hum not just with flights, but with the thunder of justice rolling in. The security desk loomed ahead, a fortress of clipboards and stern faces. The officer behind it, a middle-aged man with a badge that gleamed too brightly, eyed the group warily. "Can I help you, folks?" he asked, his tone laced with the skepticism of too many late-night disturbances. Ethan stepped forward, Noah at his side. The boy's sobs now quieted to shaky breaths. "We're looking for a passenger. Sophia Riley, Flight 214. Kid says she didn't deplane." The officer checked his screen, fingers clacking on keys, the glow reflecting off his furrowed brow. "Manifest shows her boarded. No alerts, probably just delayed in customs or baggage." But his eyes flickered, a tell Ethan knew from interrogations long past. Something hid behind those pixels. Lena leaned in, her voice calm but edged with steel. "We need access to the logs, full passenger scan, now." The officer hesitated, glancing at the growing cluster of riders outside the glass doors, their silhouettes like sentinels against the awakening sky. The air thickened with the scent of stale coffee and jet fuel wafting from the tarmac, a reminder of journeys interrupted. Ethan felt the weight of it all, the boy's trust, the crew's loyalty, the ghost of promises that demanded action. This wasn't about bikes or brotherhood alone. It was redemption's quiet roar, a stand against the indifference that let the vulnerable vanish. As the first rays pierced the horizon, illuminating the control tower like a beacon, the officer relented, pulling up deeper files. Whispers of irregularity surfaced, a last-minute boarding glitch, unverified ID flags. Sophia Riley wasn't just missing. She'd been flagged in a system riddled with shadows, corporate cutbacks masking deeper corruptions, where lost souls became statistics. Ethan's mind raced to the old vow, the one carved into his soul after losing his own sister to a similar bureaucratic black hole years ago. "We're not going anywhere," he said, his words a vow renewed. The search had begun, engines idling in the lot below, ready to tear through the veil of secrecy. For Noah, for Sophia, for the honor that bound them all, the iron vow would ride until the truth broke free. What do you think happens next? Drop a comment below. Have you ever felt that pull to step in when no one else would? The control room's hum grew louder as the officer, badge glinting under the sterile lights, reluctantly escorted the group deeper into the airport's underbelly. Fluorescent tubes flickered overhead, casting elongated shadows that danced like uneasy specters across the walls, lined with monitors and tangled cables. The air down here was cooler, laced with the metallic tang of electronics and the faint, acrid bite of overworked printers. Ethan walked at the forefront, Noah's small hand still clasped in his, the boy's steps tentative but gaining steadiness with each stride. Behind them, Marcus and Lena flanked the officer, their presence a subtle pressure, not threatening but unyielding, like the slow grind of gears in a well-oiled machine. "Look, folks," the officer said, his voice echoing slightly off the concrete, "this is restricted access. I can pull what I can, but anything beyond manifests requires higher clearance. He paused at a door marked Authorized Personnel Only, swiping his card with a beep that sliced the tension. Inside, the room opened into a nerve center of blinking screens and humming servers, where two technicians in rumpled uniforms glanced up from their stations, coffee mugs steaming in the chill. Ethan's eyes narrowed, scanning the displays. Flight paths weaving like red threads across digital maps, passenger data scrolling in endless loops. It reminded him of mission briefs in sand-swept tents, where one overlooked detail could mean the difference between return and regret. Noah tugged at Ethan's sleeve, his voice a whisper amid the whir of fans. "Is Mommy in there?" On one of those. The boy's eyes, still puffy from tears, held a flicker of hope that twisted something deep in Ethan's chest. He knelt again, the leather of his knees creaking softly. "We're gonna find out, Noah. That's a promise." The word hung in the air, heavy with the weight of oaths Ethan had carried since his days in the service, promises to brothers who'd faded into the haze of distant horizons, to a sister lost to the cold machinery of a system that prioritized procedure over people. This boy, with his wide-eyed trust, was pulling those ghosts to the surface, demanding he honor what he'd sworn long ago. Lena stepped forward, her braids swaying as she leaned over a console, her fingers hovering above the keys like a surgeon's scalpel. "Run the full trace on Riley, Sophia. Boarding pass 7B42, cross-reference with security cams from the jetway." The technician, a young woman with tired eyes and a name tag reading Clara, hesitated, exchanging a glance with her partner. "Ma'am, that's not standard protocol. We could get in trouble." Marcus crossed his arms, his broad shoulders filling the doorway, the faint scent of road dust and engine oil trailing him. "Trouble's what happens when kids like this get left behind. You gonna be the one explaining that to him?" The room fell quiet, save for the soft clicks as Clara relented, her keystrokes rapid and precise. Images flickered to life, the plane's arrival, passengers disembarking in a weary shuffle under the harsh glare of tarmac floods. There, Sophia Riley, mid-30s, dark hair pulled into a practical ponytail, a carry-on slung over her shoulder. She moved with purpose through the jetway, then vanished. No trace into the terminal, no blip on the baggage scanners. "Glitch?" Lena murmured, zooming in on a grainy frame where Sophia paused near a service door, her expression tight as if sensing shadows closing in. Ethan's gut clenched. He'd seen that look before, on faces marked by the quiet dread of pursuit. Outside, the dawn had fully broken, painting the airport's vast expanse in golden strokes that glinted off parked jets like promises of escape. In the lot, the initial dozen bikes had swelled, word spreading through the Iron Vows network like wildfire on dry plains. Riders arrived in pairs and trios, engines purring low to avoid alarming the early commuters. Javier, a wiry mechanic from the southern chapter with grease-stained hands and a tattoo of interlocking chains on his forearm, pulled up beside Rico, who was coordinating via walkie-talkies. "What's the play, boss?" Javier asked, dismounting with a nod to the growing assembly. Rico, his face etched with the lines of too many sleepless runs, clapped him on the back. "We hold the line, Ethan's inside. If it's corruption, we expose it clean." Back in the control room, the officer's radio crackled to life, a voice from upstairs cutting through. "All units stand by for priority alert, unidentified activity and sub-level maintenance." Clara's screen lit up with alerts, unauthorized access logs, timestamps aligning with Sophia's last sighting. "That's not a glitch," the second technician said, his voice dropping. "Looks like she was rerouted. Internal transfer, off manifest." Ethan's blood ran cold. Rerouted meant detours into the airport's labyrinth of holding areas, places where questions went unanswered and people became footnotes. He thought of his sister, vanishing into a web of paperwork after a routine check years back, her trail cold until it was too late. No body found, just echoes of struggle in faded reports. "Noah," Ethan said softly, turning to the boy who watched the screens with bated breath. "Tell me about your mom. What was she carrying? Anything special?" The child nodded, his backpack unzipped to reveal a small, wrapped package, a handmade quilt, stitches uneven but heartfelt. "For Grandma's birthday. Mom said it was important." Lena's eyes sharpened. Quilts could hide documents or worse, evidence that drew unwanted eyes. "We need to search those sub-levels," she urged, her voice steady as rebar. The officer shifted, sweat beading on his brow. "I can't authorize that. Call in the feds if it's serious." But Ethan was already moving, pulling out his phone to alert the crew. "Rico, fan out to maintenance entrances. Quiet recon, no badges, just eyes." The line buzzed with affirmatives, the Brotherhood mobilizing like a living organism, bound by loyalty forged in foxholes and midnight rides. As they emerged from the control room, the corridor's echoes amplified their footsteps, a rhythmic march toward truth. Noah stayed close, his fear ebbing into determination, mirroring the quiet fire in Ethan's gaze. Deeper into the airport's veins they went, past humming conveyor belts and shadowed alcoves where the scent of jet fuel mingled with damp concrete. A service door creaked open under Marcus's gentle push, revealing a dimly lit corridor lined with storage lockers and flickering emergency lights. Whispers of movement echoed ahead, footsteps, muffled voices. Ethan's hand instinctively went to his belt, not for a weapon, but for the iron medallion that symbolized their vow, to stand for the voiceless, to ride against the tide of indifference. This search wasn't just for Sophia. It was redemption's forge, hammering old scars into something unbreakable. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the gloom, a disheveled woman in airport blues, her eyes wide with recognition. You're looking for the lady from 214? She stammered, glancing over her shoulder. "They took her, said it was protocol, but it didn't feel right. Down in holding, room 12B. The air thickened with possibility, the moral weight pressing like an approaching storm. Ethan nodded, gratitude flashing in his eyes. "Lead the way." As they followed, the first distant rumble of arriving bikes vibrated through the walls, a symphony of support swelling from the horizon. The promise was unfolding, thread by thread, pulling them all toward justice's dawn. The woman's name was Carla, her airport uniform rumpled and stained with the faint residue of spilled coffee from a long shift. She moved ahead of them through the dimly lit corridor, her sneakers squeaking softly against the grated floor, each step echoing like a hesitant confession. The air down here was thicker, heavy with the musty scent of stored luggage and recirculated ventilation, undercut by the distant whine of conveyor belts grinding in the bowels of the building. Ethan kept Noah close, the boy's small fingers gripping his calloused hand, while Marcus and Lena brought up the rear, their eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of trouble. The officer trailed reluctantly, his radio clipped to his belt, crackling with static, a reminder of the fragile line they walked between vigilance and violation. "She's been asking for her son," Carla whispered over her shoulder, her voice barely rising above the hum of fluorescent strips flickering overhead. "Kept saying Noah over and over. They told her to quiet down, said it was just a routine hold for verification. But I've seen holds like this before. When the suits from upstairs get involved, it's never routine." Her words hung in the stale air, laced with the bitterness of someone who'd witnessed too many oversights turn into tragedies. Ethan felt a familiar knot tighten in his gut, the same one that had formed years ago when he'd chased leads on his sister's disappearance through endless red tape and closed doors. That case had ended in echoes, faded reports suggesting a struggle, but no closure, just the hollow ache of a promise, unkept to a family shattered. They rounded a corner. The the corridor narrowing into a labyrinth of locked doors and yellow caution tape fluttering like forgotten warnings. Room 12B loomed at the end, its metal panels scarred from years of rough handling, a small observation window smeared with fingerprints. Carla paused, fishing a master key from her pocket with trembling hands. "I shouldn't be doing this," she murmured. But her eyes met Ethan's, steady, resolute, and she turned the lock with a click that reverberated like a starting gun. The door swung open on hinges that groaned in protest, revealing a sparse holding room, a metal table bolted to the floor, 2 chairs, and a one-way mirror reflecting the tension back at them. Sophia Riley sat there, her posture rigid despite the exhaustion etching lines around her eyes. Her dark hair had come loose from its ponytail, strands framing a face pale under the harsh overhead light. She looked up sharply as the group entered, her gaze locking onto Noah first. "Noah!" The word escaped as a breath, raw with relief and fear intertwined. The boy broke free from Ethan's grasp, rushing forward with a cry that pierced the room's sterile silence. "Mommy!" Their embrace was immediate, fierce, arms wrapping tight as if to ward off the world's cruelty, the faint scent of her perfume mingling with the boy's tear-streaked shirt. Ethan stood back, allowing the moment its space, but his senses stayed sharp. The room's air conditioner droning like a distant engine. The subtle shift in Carla's stance as she blocked the doorway. "What happened?" Lena asked, her voice gentle but probing, kneeling beside Sophia as Marcus secured the door. Sophia pulled back slightly, her hands cupping Noah's face, searching for reassurance in his wide eyes. I got off the plane, everything normal. But at the checkpoint, they pulled me aside. Said my ID flagged something, a mix-up with an old ticket from years ago. They wouldn't let me go, kept asking about the package in my bag." She glanced at the quilt now clutched in Noah's arms, its fabric soft and worn, hiding whatever secrets had drawn this shadow over her life. "It's just a family heirloom, nothing more. But they acted like it was contraband. Took my phone, isolated me here for hours. No calls, no explanations." The officer cleared his throat, stepping forward with forced authority. "Ma'am, this is a secure area. If there's been a misunderstanding, we can sort it upstairs with proper channels." But his words faltered under Ethan's unblinking stare, the biker's presence filling the space like an unspoken challenge. Ethan had seen this dance before, authorities circling to protect their own, burying truths under protocols that served the powerful. "Misunderstanding," he echoed, his voice low and even, carrying the gravel of roads travelled and battles endured. "A mother separated from her kid in the dead of night? That's your protocol?" The room seemed to shrink, the moral weight pressing down, forcing choices into the light. Sophia shook her head, her voice gaining strength as she rose, keeping Noah shielded behind her. It wasn't just a mix-up. One of the agents mentioned corporate oversight, something about the airline's parent company auditing manifests. I overheard them on a call. They said to contain it quietly, whatever's in that quilt. It's not what they think, but it must be connected to why they're holding me. Lena's eyes narrowed, piecing it together, the quilt perhaps concealing documents from Sophia's work as a journalist, exposing flaws in aviation safety that threatened big interests. Corruption's tendrils wrapping around the vulnerable to silence dissent. Outside, the rumble grew louder, vibrating through the concrete like a gathering storm. Rico's voice crackled over Ethan's phone. "Perimeter's secure, Ghost. 20 more riders inbound from the East Chapter. We've got eyes on the main entrances. No one slipping away." The Brotherhood's network, woven from veterans and everyday guardians, was closing ranks, their loyalty a force as unyielding as the iron vows etched into their skins. Ethan nodded to Marcus, who slipped out to coordinate, his broad frame disappearing into the corridor's gloom. "We need to get you out of here," Ethan said to Sophia, his tone brooking no argument. "But clean. No escalating this into a scene." Carla nodded, her initial hesitation melting into resolve. "There's a service exit to the tarmac. I can get you to the lot." As they moved, Sophia clutching the quilt and Noah's hand, the group navigated the twisting paths, the airport's underbelly revealing its secrets. Discarded manifests fluttering in vents, whispers of similar holds from past shifts. Ethan's mind raced to the old promise, to safeguard the lost, as he'd failed to do for his sister. This redemption wasn't grand gestures or roaring engines alone. It was these quiet acts threading honor through the cracks of a cynical world. They emerged into the morning light, the sun now climbing higher, casting long shadows across the apron where planes taxied like steel behemoths. The parking lot had transformed, a sea of gleaming Harleys, riders dismounting with nods of solidarity, their vests bearing the Iron Vow emblem like badges of chosen kin. Javier handed Sophia a spare helmet, his grease-stained smile warm. "Ride with us if you need. We're family now." Noah's eyes widened at the sight, fear giving way to awe, the thunder of brotherhood a balm to his shattered night. But as they reached the bikes, a squad of airport security vans screeched into view, lights flashing without sirens, a silent warning. The officer radioed in, his face ashen. "They're coming for her. Said it's escalated. Federal interest." Ethan's jaw set, the dilemma sharpening. Fight the tide head-on or navigate its currents with cunning. He mounted his bike, engine growling to life, the vibration humming through his bones like a renewed oath. "We ride smart," he told the crew, Sophia and Noah settling behind Lena on her ride. "Expose the truth, not spill blood." The convoy formed, a rolling testament to loyalty's power, engines purring as they pulled away from the terminal's grasp. In that moment, with the wind whipping at their jackets and the horizon stretching wide, Ethan felt the ghosts recede slightly. The search had uncovered more than a missing mother. It had ignited a moral fire, burning away indifference to reveal the unbreakable bonds of those who chose to stand. As they merged onto the access road, the airport shrinking in their mirrors, the promise endured, carrying them toward whatever shadows lay ahead. Justice wasn't a destination, it was the ride itself, fueled by honor and the quiet roar of redemption. The highway unfurled like a ribbon of cracked asphalt under the midday sun. The Iron Vow convoy, slicing through it with a disciplined rumble that turned heads from passing semis and family sedans alike. Ethan led the pack, his Harley steady as a heartbeat, the wind tearing at his vest and carrying the faint salty tang of ocean air from the distant coast. Behind him, Sophia clung to Lena's waist, Noah sandwiched safely between them, his small helmet bobbing with the rhythm of the road. The boy's earlier tears had dried into quiet wonder, his eyes tracing the endless line of bikes, now 30 strong, chapters converging from back roads and border towns, drawn by the unbreakable call of brotherhood. Marcus rode flank, his massive frame cutting the slipstream, while Rico brought up the rear, eyes flicking to the mirrors for any sign of pursuit. They'd peeled away from the airport without a full chase, the security vans holding back under murmured orders from higher up. But the radio chatter Ethan had overheard on the officer's belt painted a grim picture. Federal shadows circling, whispers of national security protocols, masking something far seedier. Sophia's quilt lay bundled in her lap, its folds a silent enigma, the fabric whispering against her jacket with each bump in the road. Ethan glanced back once, catching her gaze. Grateful, guarded, laced with the weight of secrets she'd carried alone until now. This ride wasn't escape, it was a bridge to answers, forged from the same iron resolve that had pulled him from his own abyss years ago. After his sister's vanishing act left him adrift in a sea of unanswered questions. An hour out, they veered off the main artery onto a sun-baked service road flanked by scrub brush and rusted billboards advertising long-forgotten diners. The lead bike slowed, engines growling down to a purr as the convoy pulled into the shadow of an abandoned warehouse. Its corrugated walls peeling like old skin under the relentless light. Dust devils swirled in their wake, the air thick with the scent of dry earth and cooling metal. Ethan killed his ignition first, the sudden silence amplifying the creak of leather and the distant cry of gulls wheeling overhead. "Dismount and circle up me," he called, his voice carrying like a command from the old days. Steady amid the uncertainty. The riders formed a loose perimeter, vests glinting in the sun, chains and patches catching the light like talismans of loyalty. Javier, the mechanic with hands perpetually stained by engine grease, knelt by Sophia's bike, offering a water bottle from his saddlebag. "You holding up, ma'am? Kid looks like he could use a breather." Noah nodded shyly, accepting a granola bar from Lena, who ruffled his hair with a mother's touch honed from years of nursing shifts and lost causes. Sophia dismounted carefully, the quilt tucked under her arm, her face a map of exhaustion etched by the night's ordeal. "Thank you, all of you. I don't know what would have happened if—" Her voice trailed off, eyes scanning the group. Veterans with eyes that had stared down sandstorms, welders whose calluses told tales of mended lives, a quiet nurse named Grace who'd left her ER post to answer the muster. Ethan approached, pulling a shaded spot under the warehouse overhang where the air cooled slightly, carrying the faint must of forgotten crates. "Time to talk, Sophia. That quilt, what's it really hiding? The airport goons didn't pull you for a ticket glitch." She hesitated, glancing at Noah, who was now perched on a low crate, munching contentedly as Marcus spun a tale of desert runs to distract him. The boy's laughter cut through the tension, a fragile melody amid the gravel crunch of shifting boots. Sophia unfolded the quilt carefully, its patchwork of faded blues and greens revealing a hidden pocket sewn into the lining. From it, she drew a slim envelope, yellowed edges suggesting age and urgency. "Documents," she said softly, her fingers tracing the seal. "I'm a reporter, freelance, digging into airline safety scandals. This is evidence, internal memos from the parent company, showing how they falsify maintenance logs to cut costs, crashes covered up as pilot error, families left in the dark. I was flying to deliver it to a contact in the city, someone who could blow it wide open." The words hung heavy, the moral rot of it all mirroring the corruption Ethan had glimpsed in war zones, where power buried the truth under layers of denial. His sister's case flashed unbidden, a routine inspection at a border crossing that ended in her evaporation from records, hints of struggle in the scant reports, but no justice, just the echo of a promise he'd made to her. "I'll always find you." Lena leaned in, her silver-streaked braid falling forward as she examined the papers under the dappled light filtering through rust holes in the roof. This could explain the hold, corporate muscle pulling strings through feds to silence leaks. But why target you now? You've been quiet for years. Sophia's eyes darkened, the scent of sun-warmed fabric mingling with the sharp tang of her resolve. "Because I went public last month, anonymously tipping off a small outlet. They must have traced it back. Noah and I were just collateral in their game." The boy's name on her lips twisted the knife. Ethan saw his own failures reflected there, the vows to protect the innocent that had driven him to form the Iron Vow, a family chosen from the wreckage of loss. Rico approached from the perimeter, his walkie crackling faintly. "Scouts report vans on the highway, heading this way, slow but deliberate. We've got maybe 20 minutes before they pin us." The group tensed, the air vibrating with the low hum of idling bikes, engines ready to roar back to life. Marcus cracked his knuckles, the sound like distant thunder, but Ethan raised a hand, quelling the urge for confrontation. "No charging in blind. We expose this clean. Get those docks to light. Sophia, you got a safe contact." She nodded, pulling a burner phone from her bag, its screen flickering to life. "Yes, but we'll need to draw them off first. Give me time to transmit copies." The plan formed in hushed tones, the warehouse's shadows lengthening as the sun arced higher, casting the scene in golden hues that belied the storm brewing. Javier rigged a decoy signal with his toolkit, mimicking a breakdown to lure any tails, while Grace and a few others prepped Sophia and Noah for a quick handoff to a nondescript van borrowed from a local chapter ally, a retired cop with a grudge against bureaucratic shadows. Ethan watched it unfold, the quiet coordination a testament to their bond, forged not in blood, but in shared scars and sworn oaths. This wasn't vengeance, it was justice's slow burn, honoring the voiceless by unraveling the lies that silenced them. As the first distant flash of van lights crested the horizon, mirage-like in the heat haze, Ethan mounted up, the leather seat warm under him. "Ride hard, ride true," he murmured to the crew, the words a renewal of their core promise. Sophia hugged Noah close in the van's back seat, her eyes meeting Ethan's through the window. A silent thanks, laced with the fire of one redeemed by unlikely guardians. The convoy split, half drawing pursuit with a thunderous peel-out, dust billowing like smoke signals, while the van slipped away on a back trail, documents en route to exposure. Miles later, as the bikes regrouped at a roadside pullout overlooking rolling hills dotted with wildflowers, Ethan's phone buzzed, a confirmation from Sophia's contact, files received, story breaking by nightfall. The corruption's veil was tearing, one thread at a time, the moral victory tasting like road-worn freedom. But shadows lingered. Federal eyes wouldn't fade easily. And the ride ahead promised more trials. For Ethan it was enough. The promise kept, the family expanded, honor's quiet roar echoing in the wind. If this tale of loyalty and truth stirred something in you, smash that like button. It helps spread these stories of redemption far and wide. The sun dipped lower on the horizon, painting the rolling hills in strokes of amber and crimson, as if the sky itself were bleeding out the day's intensity. Ethan's convoy regrouped at the pullout, engines ticking cool in the fading light, the air alive with the earthy scent of wildflowers crushed under tires and the faint metallic whisper of chains settling against leather. Riders dismounted in a loose circle, their silhouettes etched against the vast expanse, a makeshift council forged from the road's unyielding demands. Sophia's van had vanished into the back trails an hour ago, its taillights swallowed by dust clouds, carrying Noah and the damning documents toward a reckoning that could shatter the veil of corporate lies. Ethan wiped sweat from his brow, the salt stinging old scars, his mind replaying the burner phone's confirmation. Files transmitted, the story poised to erupt like a long-suppressed storm. Rico approached first, his boots crunching gravel, face shadowed under the brim of his faded cap. "Scouts say the van's peeled off after the decoy. Javier's rig sold the breakdown like a pro, but they're not done. Chatter on the scanners hints at roadblocks ahead. Feds looping in local badges under some vague security threat banner." His words carried the weight of experience, eyes flicking to the highway where distant headlights pierced the twilight like probing fingers. Ethan nodded, leaning against his bike, the warm metal grounding him amid the swirl of doubt. This pursuit wasn't random. It echoed the shadows that had claimed his sister years back. A flagged inspection at a checkpoint that unraveled into nothing, leaving only vestiges of a struggle in blurred reports and a family's quiet unraveling. He'd vowed then, in the dim glow of a veteran's hall, to never let indifference win again. The iron vow had been born from that fire, a brotherhood of chosen kin who rode for the forgotten. Lena joined them, her braid loosened by the wind, carrying the faint scent of sunscreen and resolve. Sophia's contact texted back, preliminary leaks already hitting underground forums. Aviation insiders are buzzing. If it goes viral by morning, those memos won't stay buried. She glanced at the group, where Grace tended to a rider nursing a sprained wrist from the peel-out, her nurse's hands steady as she wrapped it with a bandana. The scene unfolded like a quiet vigil. Javier tinkering with a loose chain, sparks from his multi-tool glinting like fireflies, Marcus sharing water from a canteen, his laughter rumbling low as he recounted a narrow escape from a desert patrol long ago. These weren't outlaws in the tales spun by fearful headlines. They were guardians, pieced together from foxholes, factory floors, and fractured pasts, bound by oaths that outlasted rust and regret. But the peace shattered with the low growl of an approaching engine, not one of theirs, but a sleek black SUV cresting the hill, its tinted windows reflecting the dying sun like obsidian shields. The convoy tensed, hands hovering near handlebars, the air thickening with the acrid tang of anticipation. Ethan stepped forward, his posture unyielding, the iron medallion at his chest catching the last rays, a symbol of promises etched in blood and ink. The vehicle pulled to a halt 20 yards out, doors opening with synchronized clicks. Out stepped a man in a crisp suit, flanked by 2 in tactical vests, badges glinting under the pull-out single floodlight. No guns drawn, but the threat hummed in their measured strides, the scent of expensive cologne clashing with the road's honest grit. "Mr. Harlan," the lead agent said, his voice smooth as polished stone, extending a hand that Ethan ignored. "Federal Aviation Security. We need to talk about your involvement at Horizon International." The man's eyes scanned the riders, lingering on the emblems of loyalty that marked them as more than drifters. Ethan met his gaze, unflinching, the wind tugging at his vest like an urging ghost. "Talk's cheap. You mean the mother and son you let vanish into your holding rooms? Or the docs exposing how your corporate pals play fast and loose with lives?" The agent's jaw tightened, a flicker of unease betraying the facade. Ethan knew the type. Bureaucrats who'd trade honor for a promotion, blind to the human cost. The standoff stretched, the highway's distant roar underscoring the silence. Shadows lengthening as dusk claimed the hills. Lena shifted subtly, her phone hidden in her palm, recording every word for the growing digital trail. "We're not the threat here," she interjected, her tone even, laced with the quiet authority of one who'd mended too many broken by such systems. A kid crying for his mom in an empty terminal, that's where the real danger starts. You gonna explain why she was rerouted off manifest? The agent hesitated, glancing at his partners, the air electric with the unspoken corruption's web, spun from falsified logs and silenced whistleblowers, now ensnaring innocents like Sophia. Ethan's mind flashed to his sister again, her last call a plea cut short, the official line of "no foul play" ringing hollow against the scars of doubt. The lead agent lowered his hand, voice dropping to a measured cadence. "This is bigger than you know. National interests, supply chains, international flights. Those documents could destabilize alliances." But his words faltered under the collective stare of the riders, a wall of quiet defiance that spoke of oaths unbroken. Marcus stepped up, his bulk a gentle barrier. "Alliances built on lies? We've seen that before, in sands where promises meant survival. You want stability? Start with truth." The moral crossroads sharpened. Comply and fade into irrelevance, or stand firm, risking the full weight of authority crashing down. Ethan felt the pull, the old vow resurfacing like a tide, demanding he protect not just Sophia's fight, but the fragile trust Noah had placed in strangers' hands. As stars began pricking the velvet sky, the agent pulled a card from his pocket, sliding it across the gravel. "Stand down, Harlan. We'll handle it from here. Interfering crosses lines you don't want." He retreated to the SUV, the engine purring to life, taillights fading into the night like retreating phantoms. The convoy exhaled collectively, the tension uncoiling into murmurs of strategy. Rico checked his scanner. More vans rerouting, closing the net. "They're buying time," he said. "Sophia's story hits the wires soon. We need to link up with her contact, make sure it sticks." Ethan mounted his bike, the familiar vibration thrumming through him like a heartbeat renewed. "We ride to the city drop, no stopping for shadows." The engines ignited in a cascading roar, headlights piercing the dark, the convoy surging forward as one, a living promise against the encroaching night. Miles blurred, the wind carrying whispers of redemption, but Ethan sensed the storm's eye approaching, a final confrontation where loyalty would be tested, truths unearthed, and the ghosts of old failures laid to rest. For the Iron Vow, the road wasn't just asphalt, it was the path to honor's unyielding dawn, where every scar told of battles won through quiet courage. The city lights sprawled like a glittering web under the night sky, the convoy weaving through neon-veined streets with the precision of a well-rehearsed formation. Ethan's Harley hummed beneath him, the engine's steady pulse a counterpoint to the distant wail of sirens that seemed to echo from every shadowed alley. The air had cooled, carrying the urban tang of rain-slicked pavement and street food vendors hawking late-night bites, but tension coiled in his chest like a spring wound too tight. Behind him, the riders maintained formation. 30 souls strong, their headlights slicing the dark like blades of resolve. Sophia and Noah rode in the borrowed van at the convoy's core, guarded by Grace and Javier, the quilt's secrets now digitized and hurtling toward exposure in the ether of secure servers. They'd shaken the immediate tail on the outskirts, Javier's decoy breakdown buying precious miles, but Ethan knew the Fed's reach extended like invisible chains, roadblocks rerouted via scanner chatter, unmarked cars ghosting in the rear view. This drop point, a nondescript warehouse in the industrial district, was Sophia's contact's lair. A freelance investigator named Daniel, a former airline engineer turned whistleblower, his operation hidden behind crates of salvaged parts and flickering monitors. The building loomed ahead, its chain-link fence rattling in the breeze, sodium lamps casting pools of yellow light that danced across the riders' faces as they pulled in. Engines cut to silence, the sudden quiet amplifying the drip of water from a leaky gutter and the soft murmur of voices inside. Ethan dismounted first, boots thudding against the gravel lot, the scent of oil and rust grounding him. "Perimeter check," he murmured to Rico, who nodded and fanned out the flanks with Marcus, their silhouettes merging with the night. Lena stayed close to the van door as it slid open, Sophia emerging with Noah in tow, the boy's eyes wide but steady now, clutching her hand like a lifeline. "We're here," Sophia said, her voice a mix of exhaustion and fire, the faint glow from the warehouse illuminating the faint lines of strain on her face. "Daniel's waiting. If we sync the files with his archives, it's airtight. Proof of the cover-ups, names, dates, everything." Noah looked up at Ethan, his small voice cutting through the hush. "You kept your promise, like Mommy does for me." The words landed like a balm on old wounds, stirring the ghost of Ethan's sister, her laughter in faded photos, the vow he'd whispered at her empty grave, to shield the lost from the world's cold machinery. Inside, the warehouse unfolded into a labyrinth of humming servers and corkboards pinned with red-stringed conspiracies, the air thick with the ozone bite of electronics and stale coffee. Daniel greeted them at the threshold, a lean man in his 50s, with wire-rimmed glasses and a handshake firm as forged steel. "Riley," he said, pulling Sophia into a brief embrace, his eyes flicking to the boy with a nod of quiet solidarity. "Heard the chatter? Good you made it. Plug in here." He led them to a central console, screens blooming to life with cascading data streams, the soft whir of fans underscoring the gravity of the moment. Grace settled Noah on a nearby stool with a blanket and a storybook from her pack, her nurses calm, weaving a cocoon of normalcy amid the storm. As Sophia synced the files, the room's tension peaked, the digital transfer a ticking clock, each bite a nail in the coffin of corruption. Ethan paced the edge, his medallion heavy against his chest, senses attuned to the warehouse's creaks and the distant thrum of traffic. Outside, Rico's voice crackled over the walkie. Lights inbound, 2 SUVs unmarked, closing fast. The feds had triangulated the signal, their net drawing tight in this forgotten corner of the city. Daniel's face hardened, fingers flying across keys to encrypt and broadcast. Uploading to mirrors now, news outlets, advocacy groups. Once it hits, they can't bury it. Sophia's hands trembled slightly as the progress bar filled, her gaze locking with Ethan's. A silent acknowledgement of the family forged in this crucible, bound not by blood, but by the unyielding thread of honor. The doors rattled first, a forceful knock echoing like a judge's gavel. Federal agents. "Open up!" The command boomed, laced with authority's edge, flashlights piercing the grimy windows. Marcus burst in from the side entrance, breath heavy. They're surrounding 10, maybe more. Non-lethal, but they're geared. Ethan's mind raced, the moral dilemma crystallizing. Surrender the fight, and let the system swallow the truth, or stand as the wall that let it break free. He thought of his sister again, the vestiges of violence in her last known report, a struggle hinted at in shadows, unresolved because no one rode for her. Not then. But now, with Noah's trust echoing his own buried plea, he chose differently. "Get the upload complete," Ethan ordered, voice steady as rebar. "Rico, Lena, flank the rear. Draw 'em off if it goes south." The Brotherhood moved like a single breath, vests rustling as they positioned. Javier rigging a smoke diversion from warehouse flares, Grace shielding Noah and Sophia behind stacked crates. Daniel hit enter, the screens flashing confirmation. Files dispersed, the story igniting across networks like wildfire. Outside, shouts rose, doors buckling under a ram, but the agents froze as their radios erupted. Urgent dispatches of breaking news, headlines screaming airline scandal exposed, cover-ups endanger lives. The lead agent's voice cut through the chaos, hesitant now. "Stand down, all units. New orders. The subject's cleared. This is resolved." The doors swung open not in assault, but retreat, agents withdrawing with curt nods, their facade cracking under the weight of public scrutiny. Sophia emerged into the lot, Noah at her side, the night air alive with the first patter of rain, washing the grit from the air. Daniel clasped Ethan's shoulder, gratitude in his eyes. "You gave it legs. The truth rides now." The convoy reformed under the downpour, water sheeting off leather and chrome, engines roaring to life in a symphony of triumph. Sophia turned to Ethan one last time, rain tracing her cheeks like unshed tears. "We owe you everything. You didn't just find us. You reminded me what family means." Noah waved from the van, his smile a beacon, the boy's innocence redeemed by strangers' valor. As they rode out, the city blurring into highway black, Ethan felt the ghosts loosen their grip. The promise, long buried under scars and silence, had been fulfilled, not in vengeance, but in the quiet power of loyalty's stand. The iron vow thundered on, a chosen kin against the indifferent tide, their path lit by the moral fire of truths unearthed. In the rear view, the warehouse faded, but the dawn of justice stretched ahead, endless and unbreaking. Thank you for riding along on this journey of promises kept and shadows lifted. If these tales of courage and redemption resonate with you, hit that subscribe button. We'll keep the stories coming, one honorable mile at a time.